Sketch using zeros and multiplicity. All right, so what I need to do is I need to find out my zeros first and what the multiplicity of each one is. That'll give me an idea of what a sketch is. Before I even do that though, this is what I recognize. This is a quartic with a negative leading coefficient. So my graph is going to look something like that. Exactly like that? No, but something like that. Now I need to find out the zeros. So the way I find out my zeros is I set that equal to 0 and factor as much as I can. Let's factor out a negative x squared. When I factor out a negative x squared, that leaves me with x squared minus x minus 2. Now we factor what's left over here. I have negative x squared. Two numbers that add up to negative 1 and multiply out to negative 2 would be x minus 2 and x plus 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to list out my zeros and its multiplicity. Okay, if negative x squared is equal to 0, that gives me a 0 of 0 with a multiplicity of 2. That's going to be very important. This gives me a 0 of 2, its opposite, and this gives me a 0 of negative 1, its opposite. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those zeros and that information right here to make what's called a sign graph. Okay, I'm going to make what's called a sign graph. On this sign graph, I have my three zeros in order, negative 1, 0, and positive 2. Okay, now what's very important is whenever the multiplicity is an even number, what happens is my graph as I draw it out ricochets off of the x-axis. This axis, the x-axis right here. When my multiplicity is regular, it goes through. So I know that my graph is going to look like this. Okay? I know my graph's going to look like that. So since it goes through negative 1 first and the multiplicity is 1, it's going to go through that line like this. Now it's going to come back down, and this is very important. If it's going to go through 0, the multiplicity would have to be 1. But the multiplicity is 2 here, which means what's going to happen is it's going to bounce right off. It's going to come back up and go through the 2. And when I say through the 2, I actually mean through the 2 and not next to it. So check this out. No problem. So what happened is the reason why it goes through 2 is the multiplicity is 1. The reason why it bounces off to 0 is because of the multiplicity of 2. And the reason why it goes through negative 1 is the multiplicity is 1. So a sketch of this graph would look like this. Okay, it goes through 1, bounces off. Holy cow, that looks bad. Where it goes through negative 1, bounces off of 0, goes through 2. Now the reason why this bump is a little higher is because there's more space between the 0 and the 2 than the negative 1 and the 0. But if I could actually draw stuff out, this would be a much smoother looking curve, but this is a general idea of what it'll look like.